Welcome to the Core Experience, your connection to community, business, and the people who make it all happen with your host, Brandon Suba.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Core Experience. I'm Brandon Suba. I'm a relationship manager in the healthcare space at Core Bank, also the voice here of the podcast, and excited to be here today. We're doing the remote in because we have a very, very special guest. And then with me today in the studio is someone I am just honored to have and look up to, Lindsay Borgeson, who has really made a great name for herself in the banking space over the years, I must say. And we went to school together.
We did, yes.
It wasn't until I walked in for the interview that I put it together. And then I believe your exact quote was, "Oh, this will be fun," as we sat down to do the interview. So, but I'm glad I made it through, and I'm glad you brought me on. And it's been a fun ride. Thank you, appreciate that. Just waiting till a year or so.
Yeah, it's early.
You still feel the same way. Okay, well, I'll have them introduce themselves here in a second. But we are on season 2 of the Core Experience here, where we really try to bring some very influential people in the community and bring good, valuable information. And today, we really are going to focus on a fantastic cause. And you might want to have your tissues next to you, because the stories that are shared, with my experience so far with this, they can get a little tugging on the heartstrings, but great stories to hear and a great opportunity. So what I am talking about is the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Right now is a big campaign going on. I believe it is Visionary of the Year. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's what we're calling that. Lindsay is in the running for this. She has a team. I'm on the team. Happy to be on the team. And then we have Aaron, who, as far as I know, you run the show. Is that right, Aaron? You're kind of in charge?
Well, the candidates run the show. I just try to make sure the show goes on.
Okay, perfect. So that's a much better way than I said it for you. So first off, Aaron, how about you introduce yourself a little bit? Give us the background of what got you to this point with the LLS organization.
Well, I am Aaron Marr, and I am the campaign development manager for Visionaries of the Year. I, as you can hear, have a little voice issue today, but I joined LLS as a candidate actually in 2021 for what was Man and Woman of the Year. And then at the end of my campaign, I actually left my career, joined LLS to continue raising funds. My brother was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia in July of 2018, and he is still with us today after being told he was not going to be with us 3 days after his diagnosis. So I continue to want to raise money and find cures for blood cancers and work with candidates like Lindsay to do that.
Beautiful passion. And Lindsay, how about you? What got you involved in the organization?
Yeah, so a contact of mine actually reached out and asked to grab coffee. She was a candidate last year, and I believe she's still involved in the organization. And as they were seeking candidates for this year's campaign, I popped into mind. And I wasn't that familiar with LLS at the time, but I think I was sold after an hour of coffee and hearing about their great mission. So I'm excited to be running a campaign this year with my wonderful team and contributing to the cause.
Beautiful. All right, Aaron, back to you here. And by the way, I've got to promote this. If you want to see us all and see this really cool 2-screen we have, you can always jump onto the Core Bank YouTube page, and we push these out with video too. So, and as I always say, you get to see me in a suit coat, not something you see every day there. Okay, Aaron. So let's get a little more information so that our listeners understand what the organization is about. So there's 3 pillars that the LLS society, or I guess S is the society. So the LLS has. What are those 3 pillars?
So the 3 pillars that especially our campaign is focused on and our mission is focused on are the research, patient support, and advocacy, making sure that basically we are finding treatments and cures for leukemia. We are helping patients and their families when they receive a diagnosis with financial assistance and education, and then advocacy to make sure that everyone has access to the same treatments with a blood cancer diagnosis.
And you find, which pillar do you find most passion towards since you've been through the mix of it?
Well, it's a total toss-up. When my brother was diagnosed, I was actually told by his doctor at the hospital to not look on Google for information, but to go to LLS because the LLS site has accurate information and just treatment information. But I'm super passionate about research because it's the treatments that actually saved his life and have saved the lives of many people I know's children and family members.
Excellent. So let's dig a little more into that. As we're going through this process, as we're going through the campaign, there's a lot of money that's going to be raised. Phenomenal efforts people are putting in. How will the money raised help LLS?
Well, it helps LLS because when the money comes in, it goes into our LLS funds, which then turn around and actually come back to patients and their families here in the state of Nebraska. And in 2022, we had over $3 million that went back to Nebraska patients and their families for copay assistance and even gas cards and different things to get to treatments.
Just the organization and to be able to help, because I mean, you two have experienced this. Your brain's not focused on those things, right? It's focused on so many other things. Is there any story that kind of stands out with something that they received and just really was heartwarming for you?
The financial assistance is huge because no one schedules a cancer diagnosis and not everyone is financially prepared for it. So when someone has the opportunity to call LLS and know that, say, in the example of a child who's been diagnosed, one or both parents want to be there with their child for the initial treatment for those 30 days. And having that financial assistance has allowed people to make their mortgage payments, afford to be able to go to treatment. And a lot of times they're not diagnosed in Omaha, where a lot of the treatment at Children's happens. And so being able to get them there and have time with their families, what's most important.
Wonderful. Lindsay, coming over to you.
Yeah.
So you have a big passion for this. I've gotten to hear your story a few times, but I do believe that these personal stories and explaining where the money goes and these heartwarming events really is inspiring. And your story is no exception to the inspiration. So can you tell us a little bit about your story and really what inspired you to be part of this?
Sure. Unfortunately, my family's been impacted several times by blood cancers and cancer in general. So, the mission to see a future without cancer is so important. But ultimately, the story of mine and that really drove me to run in this campaign. And I'm running in memory of my stepmother, Jolene. When she was 27 years old, she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She had my brother at the time who was about preschool age, and the prognosis wasn't good. She tried chemo, she had radiation, and things were not improving. So I'm running on the research pillar because she was randomly selected to be one of the first recipients of a stem cell transplant, which ultimately provided us with 30 more years with her. She was pretty incredible. We kind of joke that through all that she went through, if you asked her how she was doing, she'd say, well, good. So you never knew how much she was struggling and how she stood out even further and was recognized by UNMC as they told her she would never have children after everything she underwent. And ultimately, as a teacher in second grade in Westside School District, that was really hard news. She was passionate about children. I'll never forget, as a child, I went with her to her doctor's appointment. We thought maybe it had returned. And when she got an ultrasound, they said, no, there's a heartbeat in there. Wow. And so it was just an incredible day. And she ended up having my two other brothers after that treatment. And so it was just great. And research is important to have more stories with those type of outcomes. However, at that time, the treatment was a bit toxic, which is another reason research is so important. So at the age of 55, she had a lot of issues leading up to then due to the radiation where her organs were impacted. So ultimately, she needed a heart transplant. She got the call when I had a newborn, my second child, and I remember it was about midnight that they called, and she was so excited that there was a heart available for her. Unfortunately, during that transplant, she had some issues and did not make it out. So grateful for the advances that gave us the time, but further research and improvement to those treatments will make sure that people can live their full life. So taken too soon.
Amazing thing you guys are doing. The organization, the funding, it's just great opportunity. And I know there's many other stories that people share. And as you guys are experiencing the campaigns and everything, they really say share your story, because it's sadly how amazing it is, how many people are impacted that you have no idea. No idea. Tell you the truth, when we started this campaign, I didn't even put two and two together, but a coworker of my wife's was diagnosed with leukemia. And I think it was at our first big meeting that it clicked in my head that, wow, here's a family that we've known forever. I joined this just to be supportive, and it sounded like an exciting situation. But then really I had somebody personal that was being impacted too. So again, you just never really know who has those stories.
Too many.
So let's talk about some events that we can kind of drum up some business and give some more opportunity. So Lindsay, what are you doing here locally, Omaha, Nebraska here, locally that we can participate in?
Yeah, you bet. Well, first of all, simple as providing donations to the campaign, or even just spreading awareness. I'm constantly posting on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook. I am not cool enough to know how to do Snap or Instagram, so you got to check out those two pages. But anything that I can ask anyone to share or donate. In addition, I've done a lunch and learn at Core Bank that Aaron joined us for, which was wonderful. And thanks to the Core Bank employees that supported that. And then Pint 9 in Papillion has been so gracious to host us every Wednesday through the month of May. And a portion of their sales will go to the campaign. Customers can donate. We have QR codes around on tables. So that's just a fun way to go out, have fun, and do good.
And enjoy a beer maybe while you're donating.
That's another perk.
Aaron, are there any larger scale donation opportunities out there, just not the local ones we talked about?
There are sponsorship opportunities for businesses and anyone who wants to sponsor that way. But then also we will have our grand finale event on Friday, June 9th. And that's a great opportunity with a silent auction where people can bid on silent auction items and attend the event and actually make donations that evening.
Do you need more items for silent auction? Is that something you look for? Or?
Yeah, we definitely would need more items for silent auction. And the more items we have, obviously, the more money we can raise that evening as well. And for Lindsay's auction items, anything that she brings to the campaign, regardless of who bids on the auction item, all of that goes towards her campaign total.
Oh, excellent. And you got some baskets you're working on, right?
Baskets. We've got tickets to football games, concerts, gift cards to restaurants. So we've got a lot of good stuff that will be available to bid on.
That'll be a fun event. Now, I think we wanted to talk about this. So you can't just show up to that event, right? There's a little more that goes into it.
Yes, you have to actually get the invitation and RSVP and sign up to be there, because we do need to make sure we know how many people are going to be there, so they have food at their table.
And I've heard it's a very fun event, so I'm looking forward to it.
It really is. You get dressed up and it's a gala. It's a night to really celebrate everything that has come into this campaign. And the one thing I'll say is I look at when we started this campaign and when we will finish on June 9th, and every dollar we raise turns around and goes back to cancer patients and their families. So that's a huge thing for me personally.
Can I go off script, Brandon?
Always.
You know,
always.
The other thing maybe Aaron can speak to is the campaign has honored heroes that will be honored that evening as well. I don't know if you could give us just a quick tell us about those folks and their story.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a pediatric honored hero and an adult honored hero. Our pediatric honored hero is Lily, and she's 7 years old, lives in Hastings, was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, and she is now actually in remission, cancer-free, and doing really well. And then our adult honored hero is Vince, and I don't give his age out, but he is in Omaha and has actually just recently been deployed in the Air Force and returned to Nebraska. So he will be with us the night of grand finale as well. He had an acute form of leukemia as well and is doing amazing, well enough to go back and serve our country. So looking forward to celebrating both of them and honoring the journey that they've been on as well.
It's going to be a fun night.
It is.
A real fun night there. Okay, I'll kind of go back and forth here. Lindsay, I'm going to start with you. Is there anyone you want to give a shout out, kind of recognize through the last, month and a half now?
So many, but I'll pick a few. Everybody that's donated thus far, and then I'll give a preemptive thank you to those that may still do so. The team, I've got a great team on the campaign. I believe there's 15 that are helping me in the efforts, and so I really appreciate them. Core Bank, I'd be remiss if I didn't say they are sponsoring the event, so I appreciate their contribution. Leadership Omaha Class 44, best class ever. They've come through quite a bit too, and hosted an evening where, again, beers with part of the proceeds going to the campaign. Red Zone Tickets has donated. There's just so many to name, but if I'm forgetting anyone, I apologize. But thus far, very appreciative to those that have come through.
Erin, how about you?
Well, I was going to say I'm especially thankful to Core Bank for being one of our corporate sponsors this year. And really, we've got an amazing candidate class again. And it always inspires me to see what people do for the mission. And I'm incredibly grateful to all 8 candidates and their team members, because we've got nearly 100 people that are all participating and helping us to raise money. And hopefully one of these days we will have a cure, not just treatment.
Absolutely. And Erin, I love your story because it's one of those, you participated and now you are part of. And I think there's no more passion you can share in an organization like this than to basically give up your life that you've created and kind of pivot and go this way. Ooh, pivot.
Well, and 3 years ago, I did not like to ask people for money. And now I ask people for money all the time, but I also see all the positive things that come from the money we raise. So I will continue to ask people for money to help us find a cure for cancer.
Well, it's a good ask. This is a good ask. All right. Well, as we kind of wrap this up, Lindsay, any last thoughts towards the organization and the events?
I think I'd just say that anything helps, right? Anything that anyone's able to contribute, it goes a long way. And so please kind of look for those opportunities. And I know next year we'll need new visionaries. So this is an annual campaign. And to Erin's point, it is a little nerve-wracking to think about asking for money, but this is so important. And the people that contribute, you'd be surprised of their personal stories. I've learned about so many of my connections that I had no idea, as you mentioned, that have been impacted. And so it really has brought me closer to some folks in my life too. So it's a rewarding cause, and I appreciate any donations and support. And then if you feel motivated, I know you can come to me or Erin, and would love to have you participate in future campaigns.
Ooh, Erin, can you follow that up with any final thoughts?
I don't know if I can follow it up that well, but yeah, the one thing I will mention is any donation is tax deductible. So people who donate will get a receipt for their tax deductible donation. But the other thing that's huge is the research that we're doing and the treatments that LLS funds and treatments that ultimately bring people to remission and make them cancer-free. Those treatments for blood cancers are then often used for other cancers as well. So while we are here for LLS and blood cancers, when I see some of where those blood cancer treatments have gone to treat other cancers, it helps us all the way around in any cancer diagnosis.
And we'll probably put some information in the post of this podcast so you can connect to the LLS webpage for donation opportunities. Just make it as easy as possible. I think the easier you can make it to give people to give money, the better and the more likely. Because I'm a big believer, if 10 people give $10, that goes quite a ways versus people think they have to show up with the big $10,000 donation and all that. And no, if everybody gives a little, it ends up being a lot.
Right. Yep.
All right. Well, with that, thank you both for being on today. Lindsay, I'm so happy I finally got you into the studio, and for such a great reason. And Erin, I know I've seen you live. Thanks for not driving all the way for just a quick little jaunt of a presentation, because I know you do that quite often around the Nebraska area.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. And for more information on the Core Experience podcast, you can go to corebank.com/podcast or email coreexperience@corebank.com. If you have any topics in the banking world or just life, we'll take on anything here that you'd like us to talk about. We'd love to research that and get that information out to you in the podcast form. So again, thank you both for being on today. And for all of our listeners, I look forward to talking to you on a future podcast.
Thank you for listening to The Core Experience, your connection to community, business, and the people who make it all happen. For more details, go to corebank.com/podcast or email coreexperience@corebank.com. Brought to you by Core Bank, member FDIC.